Hey, grace and peace. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well out there. My name is Paul Dezay. I'm the pastor at Sandy Hook UMC here in Columbus, Indiana. It is good to be with you on this Wednesday. Wednesday is video day. Share different thoughts from week to week, devotional thoughts. Today is a little bit different. I'm going to start a series of devotional videos on this book that just came out yesterday. It's called Centering Jesus by Derek Vreeland. Centering Jesus by Derek Vreeland. And so what we'll do is I'll talk about a few chapters each week over the next few weeks, what God is saying to me as I read this book by Derek. I met Derek Vreeland, the author of this book, back in 2016. Stacy and I were on sabbatical, and we went to Kansas City for two reasons. Number one was a Kansas City barbecue tour. Fantastic place. My favorite barbecue is Kansas City. Second is to visit Derek Vreeland's church. He's a discipleship pastor at Word of Life Church in St. Joseph, Missouri. The senior pastor is Brian Zond, and they were hosting a conference on spiritual formation, specifically prayer. And Stacey and I went there, and we just had a great time. Met Derek, really connected with him. I've read all his books, and I very much enjoy his thoughts that he has on discipleship, spiritual formation, and things like that. And this book, so far, what I've read of Centering Jesus, is fantastic. Thank you, Derek, for sending me a copy of the book in advance. And I'm looking forward to reviewing it as I go, and then also at the end. And hey, if you're looking for a good book to read, I highly recommend Centering Jesus. So far, I think it's fantastic. Well, let's jump in. I'm going to share a little bit over the forward, the introduction, and chapter 1 today, and then we'll start a few more chapters next week. So, what's the point of the book? Centering Jesus. In the book of Revelation, there is this scene starting in chapter 4 and on at the Lamb at the center of the throne. Everything revolves around the Lamb of God, the slaughtered Lamb, that is at the center of the throne. So picture the heavenly throne room as everything in the round with Jesus at the center. And that's not just a future thing. The book of Revelation is a present reality. It was Jesus was at the center of the throne back in the first century when Rome and Caesar was claiming to be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. John says, no, Jesus is at the center of the throne in heaven. And Jesus is still at the center of the throne. So that's the premise of the book. And he uses the analogy of a musical instrument. In fact, I think this might be in the forward. A musical instrument going out of tune to be a reminder that we naturally drift, and we have to be intentional of putting Jesus at the center. Think of a piano, and naturally goes out of tune over time and needs to be attuned to get it back so it sounds good. Not that I know anything about musical instruments. Michelle told me that she schedules it regularly, our organist. She schedules tuning regularly for our piano so that it doesn't get out of tune and sound horrible. Our spiritual lives and also our churches will drift over time. And so we have to be intentional of putting Jesus at the center. Oftentimes we throw other things in the center or clutter the center of our lives or drift, allowing ourselves to be the center of our lives. But there is the way God created all things is for Jesus to be at the center, and we live as restored human beings when Jesus becomes the center of our lives. In the book, Derek talks about three key areas of our lives that are affected when Jesus is at the center, or conversely, negatively impacted when something else is at the center, like ourselves. Our spiritual formation, our moral lives, and our common life together. Spiritual formation is being shaped into the image of Jesus, the image of Christ. And so when Jesus is at the center, we become more and more like him, Christ-likeness, holiness. When something else is at the center of our lives, we become more like it, whatever it be. So we become like what we worship. We become more like Jesus, as Jesus is at the center of our lives. The second is our moral lives, which is about our virtuous life, love and faith and peace and the fruit of the Spirit. When Jesus is at the center, we become more like him in the way that we exhibit our moral lives and choices and behaviors, right? So we become more loving because the God of love is at the center. And conversely, when Jesus is not at the center, we become less loving. And then the third impactful thing of Jesus being at the center is our common life together. We become more unified when Jesus is at the center. Obviously, we have a problem today in North America, and in our churches. Jesus has drifted, or we've allowed Jesus to drift. We've become the center. And Derek in the book talks about 4 diseases that he sees because of that drifting. The first is autonomous thinking, in other words, self-sufficiency. We think we can do it on our own, and we don't need Christ. And that's the first disease that we see in our world. And of course, we live in a world that's focused on individualism and pulling ourselves up when we fall down and acting tough and not admitting that we're vulnerable, right? And so we live in this world, and it's very easy for the church to become, self-autonomous or self-sufficient. The second one is militant masculinity. We see this in the church, where the model of the Christian male is John Wayne, right? And unfortunately, the model should be Jesus, but unfortunately, we've allowed our cultural definitions of masculinity, the tough guy, right, to be our example. Even if there's church conferences out there for men, specifically men, and the videos that promote them are all about, firing guns and MMA fighting and real violent kind of things. And that's held up as being a model of what it means to be a man. And unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way. It should be Jesus as our example of what masculinity looks like, and that's not the firing guns and the MMA fighting. It's much different. The third aspect is our how does he phrase it in here? An addiction to antagonism, and that's where we see this. We love to fight in our world, and when Jesus is not at the center of the throne, we see that disease of antagonism. We're addicted to it. It's the world we live in. All you have to do is turn on the news, and we see this side fighting against this side, and we're addicted to that hostility. It's a cutthroat thing. And the reason why I can say that this disease is real, I see it every day, is the willingness for Christians to call other people names, derogatory names, and that's okay. We see politicians referring to other politicians with negative nicknames. And I just think that's not respectful. And when we do that, when we call people names, it's dehumanizing. It not only dehumanizes them in the eyes of others, but it dehumanizes ourselves, right? And so we become less than when we make someone else less than human. And the fourth disease that we see when Jesus is not at the center is a divided church. We see this in the United Methodist Church, where about 20% of the churches have disaffiliated, left the United Methodist Church. We're a very divided church, and this is just all denominations, right? We're divided on so many issues. We're not unified. When Jesus is the center, he draws all of us to himself, right? When we allow Jesus to be the center of our lives, it brings us together. We fix our eyes on Jesus and not the things that divide us, right? And so those are 4 diseases that we see in our world, and I imagine you all would agree that those 4 are in existence in the church and in our world. So Over the next few weeks, we'll talk about the rest of the book and how we put Jesus back at the center of our lives and our churches. And I believe this is so very important for us in this day. And I hope you agree with me on that. And so, hey, pick up this book. I don't get any kickback on this. This is just me recommending this great book by Darren Freeland, Centering Jesus. And I think it's important for our church, Sandy Hook United Methodist Church. So that's all I got for you. I will see you again, hopefully Sunday, but I'll see you next week as we go through the next few chapters of this great book. Grace and peace, everyone. Have a good week.